Hi, everyone. This video is going to focus on microbes and human health. We are at the point in the module where we are starting to look at all the ways microbes influence our lives and the world around us. So this video specifically is going to talk about how microbes play an important role in human health, but their effects aren't always harmful. So some microbes do cause disease or create challenges for treatment, but many others actually protect us, support normal body functions, and can even be harnessed to help us fight infections. So, the first one that we're going to talk about is our normal microbiota. And this is the microorganisms that typically live on or inside our bodies, often without causing disease. Most components of our normal microbiota are actually beneficial. They help us with things like digestion, making vitamins, and actually protecting us from pathogens. But sometimes parts of our normal microbiota can go rogue and they can become what are termed opportunistic pathogens. So if you look at the term opportunistic pathogen, remember, we've already defined pathogen as a disease-causing entity, and opportunistic is telling us that these microbes are only going to cause disease when the opportunity arises. So, a great example of this are yeast infections. So, yeast is a common component of the normal microbiota in the vaginal area. And as you can see in this picture on the right, the normal microbiota differs throughout the body. So if we're talking about the vaginal microbiota, yeast is a component of that. And normally it's living there in peaceful harmony with all the other components of the microbiota. But let's say somebody gets sick and they take an antibiotic. Well, what the antibiotic is going to do is going to wipe out good and bad bacteria. Well, that is going to suddenly make more space available in the environment and more resources, more nutrients. And so the yeast can be like, well, hey, check out all this new space and new food. And it can essentially overgrow, become overpopulated. And that leads to a yeast infection. So yeast is an opportunistic pathogen because normally it's chill, hanging out, doing its thing, causing no problems. But when the opportunity arose, it became a problem. Okay. So normal microbiota, good. It's made up of a uh, 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 diverse set of microbes, different types of microbes. And as I mentioned, the normal microbiota composition is going to vary based on what part of the body we're talking about. And you most certainly do not need to go memorize uh, this visual. All right. Another big way that microbes and human health are connected is through antibiotics. So, antibiotics are drugs that are used to treat bacterial infections. Okay, bacterial. Notice it does not say antiviral, okay? Antibiotics do absolutely nothing against viruses, but more on that later. So antibiotics are going to target important structures or processes of bacteria, okay? And it's either going to kill them or inhibit their growth and ability to divide. So the discovery of antibiotics really transformed medicine. It was actually kind of discovered by accident, which is pretty cool. But what this really did is it made previously dangerous infections treatable. Unfortunately, their overuse and misuse have contributed to the growing issue of antibiotic resistance. And this actually ties in to phage therapy. And that's because phage therapy is often, well, is now becoming a more possible treatment option to antibiotic resistant infections. So, phage comes from the term bacteriophage, and these are viruses that can only infect and therefore harm bacteria, right? Not us, they don't hurt us. And so, what scientists have begun doing is they will use phage, okay, or bacteriophage to target bacterial infections. Okay, this is actually a really old idea, but it's receiving a lot of renewed attention because it's providing us with a way to treat certain antibiotic resistant infections. Okay, because unlike broad spectrum antibiotics, phages can be highly specific for a very specific bacteria. So if a medical team can identify the specific, strain of bacteria that's making somebody sick, if we don't have any antibiotics that can work, they can develop like a phage cocktail that can go in and specifically kill those bacteria. And what's interesting, right, is that bacteriophage, when they get into a bacteria, they make more of themselves that get released when the bacteria dies. And so they're essentially creating more of the solution once inside the body, which is pretty cool. All right, lastly, that we're going to talk about a little bit now, but more later on in the unit, are biofilms. So, a biofilm is actually this community of microorganisms, all different types of microorganisms, that have attached to a surface. And these tend to grow more upwards than outwards. And what they do is they secrete and create this kind of protective extracellular matrix. And this makes it really hard to get rid of these organisms participating in the biofilm because even when antibiotics are taken, it can be a challenge to get the antibiotics to permeate through that extracellular matrix. So these biofilms can form on all sorts of surfaces, things from teeth to medical devices like catheters and heart valves, even to tissue. And the protection that's provided by the community can make those microbes much more difficult to eliminate, not only about with antibiotics, but with disinfectants and even the immune system. And so this is one reason biofilms are particularly important in persistent and healthcare associated infections. Another term for healthcare associated infections is nosocomial infection. So you'll be seeing that word later on in the unit. All right, y'all, that is going to be it for this video. Please let me know if you have any questions.